I was busy pushing bodies around, as you well know. And what would the note say, Dan? Cat dead, details later? Death is just the beginning as we have a look at the new NECA toy release of the retro cloth re-animator Herbert West. Before we have a look at Herbert, and we have a look at all of his accessories, and he's got some pretty cool accessories. Let's first figure out how tall the figure stands. So we put that right next to the top of his head, which is about roughly there. The figure stands at 7.8 inches in height, or for those who use centimeters, you're looking at a little shy of about a 20 centimeter tall figure. Of course, what I always like to do when it comes to these retro cloth figures is show you this fantastic artwork that come included with the figures. This is probably some of my favorite right here. Up at the top we have H.P. Lovecraft's classic tale of horror, the Re-Animator. There's Herbert West down below, or right around this section of the package artwork, and of course the figure would be right here. Down below, Death is just the beginning, and there's the back. Shows you the different things that he comes included with. He really does come with a whole lot of cool stuff. And there's the date down below, to 1985 actually, the release of Re-Animator. Awesome artwork. You know where this is going to go into my sleeve covers, where I keep all the retro cloth artwork. It's some of NECA's finest. I sound like a broken record for saying this, but I really would love to see them release the Art of NECA, title pending of course, and include all of these inside. The artwork is that good. Let's run through Herb's accessories, one of which being the cat. This is Rufus the cat, actually. Well, it's safe to say, I mean, I don't have to describe this to you. It's pretty safe to say that the cat is dead. Considerably dead. A very mangled state this furry feline is in, and NECA has never done better. It really does look garishly gross, as it really should be. There's no poseability, unfortunately, on him. He has a considerably broken back, but there's nothing that you can move on Rufus here. He's just a Staction plastic sculpted piece. But it does look very accurate to the way it did in the movie, as gruesome and garish as it may be. We'll put him over there. Speaking of corpses, of course you've got the head of Dr. Hill. And I think that's really accurate, actually. That looks quite a bit like him. Well, at least the neck up of him. Got a whole bunch of blood on the side of his face. Of course, a severed stump on the underside of his head. He's a really nice showpiece. Obviously, he's not freestanding, so luckily they also, of course, include the little basin tray that you can have the head sitting in top of. I guess you really want to have it kind of up like this so he can talk to him. The dish itself, very heavily soaked in actually several shades of blood. The side of it actually does give it the sense that it is metal. It does feel plastic though, but looking at it, it does almost look like it could realistically be metal. It's almost got this marbling kind of splattered effect that they've done here. The offsetting colors of the light and the darker gray really does give it that sense that it looks like it's metal. And then you can go ahead and just put his head in there. It's to be expected that the head doesn't sit 100% flushed. It's not a flat head. You can't perfect severing off somebody's head. So it is rather jagged looking presentation underneath. And as a result, he doesn't really sit all that well, but he sits well enough for it to be a severed head inside of this little basin tray or so. Put that right over there. Of course, one of the other included accessories is the shovel, and a good sufficient amount of blood added to that as well. Blood makes its way slightly up the top portion of the handle, although rather unscathed is the handle, the wooden handle portion of the shovel. It's very nicely painted there, adequately painted, let's say it that way. Just the very subtlest of little grains that they've added to the handle portion, just to give it that sense that it does look like it's a wooden handle. Feat, I think, is actually successful here. You could put it theoretically in his hand, although his hands are really sculpted for something else. We'll talk about that in a second. The closest one I would say by proximity is probably this hand here as the one that you would want to have him holding the shovel in. The arthritic hand here on the other hand is actually used for something else. I guess you could put the shovel really in that hand as well, but it does look a little on the awkward side. It obviously does not, it's not intended to fit in this hand. I guess if anything, it's really intended for this hand if, you know, you had to display him with it. Obviously, the go-tos, I think specifically for West here, is more so the reagent vial and the reagent serum, the actual syringe here. One of the other things I want to mention that he does come included with is a pocket protector, which actually when you get it in packaging, it's a separate piece altogether. The pocket protector is flat on at least half of it, with the top portion being a little bit on the broader side. So a few pencils, there's one pencil, one pen, possibly a little smaller device in there as well. And it actually fits just in his pocket, just slides into place like that. Enough of it sticks far enough in that it does stay in place. Tipping the figure, not that you would want to do so, you may probably have that just falling out, but just kind of tuck that in place, and you can kind of even just put the collar over top of it and just kind of keep that all hidden. Like I said, he does come with the vial. Let me just put him down for a second here. The little bottle of reagent. A slightly almost translucent bottle with a black lid here, a black little turn cap there, and then you can see the reagent inside. It's almost like a pastel green that they've painted it in. Got a slightly fluorescent look for it as it does in the movie. And of course you've got your syringe there as well. A non-working syringe, I just want to stress that. It's not something that you can pull. Well, I guess you could pull it out. It's not really intended to be pulled out. But I guess if you wanted to, you could kind of pull it out just a little bit so it doesn't look like he has actually started administering the reagent yet. But it's not really supposed to be something that you're going to be removing anyways. And these are probably my go-to for accessories at the very least when it comes to displaying him. So let's talk a little bit about that and then we'll look at the figure itself. One hand, the hand that I just recently, you were watching it, that he was holding the shovel in. We can go ahead and put the reagent bottle in. His thumb right there, and ideally it's really just this finger that's holding the bottle in place. It kind of sits awkwardly, but I guess it's enough that you could kind of make it look like he is pulling it from, like the syringe is actually pulling it from the vial, the actual bottle here. And then these fingers otherwise would normally look rather arthritic. You can take the syringe, and those fingers and thumb now serve a purpose, as it does actually look like he's about to squeeze the handle portion and administer the reagent. I'll probably display him like this. That's maybe probably put like this down slightly. There we go. And I'll probably just display him like that. He does look good. And I'm happy that he comes with as many accessories as he does. One of the other things that you can do with his hand as well, that the packaging also shows, is that you can take Rufus and you sort of just put his hand, let me just show you here. Actually, I'll take it out. In between his, I suppose, two legs and his tail, there's a gap right there. You can fit the hand in between. And it sits kind of in between those areas. It's not always the most successful things that you can accomplish. Actually, you just get that in there. I had it. I literally just had it. You were watching it. I just literally had it. Let's try clamping onto his leg. There we go. Did I get it? No, I didn't get it. Try it right. I had it just a second ago. It clamps right, let me just show you, it clamps like right in there. There we go. All right, now we're back in business. Nope, not quite. The cat is also supposed to fit into his hand. It just doesn't do the greatest of jobs. The hand is actually just supposed to, like I said, fit in there. You could kind of put the leg kind of clamp it around his hand as well, kind of like that, but it doesn't stay well enough, kind of like that. There we go. That's what I was kind of talking about, right in there. And you can have him holding it that way as well. It's kind of gruesome, I have to admit, having him holding the dead cat. Ideally, really, what's missing in all of this is a table. I could probably find like a smaller action figure table and just put everything on top of that. One thing, I mean, if they had released this as a deluxe set, at the very least, they could have given us like a little silver slabbed table in which you could really have had all of this stuff sitting on top. As a result, the cat, as a result, the dish, and as a result, the head of Dr. Hill all kind of just sit on the floor, or really on a surface, depending on where you're having the figure. Again, a tabletop would have gone certainly a long way here. Anyways, we've spent a lot of time talking about dead cats. Pains me actually to say that because I love cats so much. Let's have a look at the figure itself. The figure itself is pretty good, looking like Herb, but I have to say this though. Unfortunately, Herbert West, though it does bear a good striking resemblance to him, I don't know what's happened with the face, and I don't know if that's necessarily just mine or if it's across the board. If you've managed to pick the figure up for yourself, let me know down below. It reminds me, looking at the figure, even though it bears no resemblance to it, it reminds me of Billy from Silent Night, Deadly Night, which I also did a retro cloth figure review of that if you wanted to go check that out. But it sort of falls under the problem that they had a really good head sculpt here, and ultimately it gets sort of lost with this muddy paint. I have to, of course, I cannot overlook for the fact, I want to just mention that I've got these little scratches on the side of his face here as well. I don't think it's supposed to be there. I mean, in fact, looking at the packaging, let's bring in the packaging right there. Like, the packaging at all does not show that he's got scratching on the side of his face. I thought maybe it could have been a scratch from something in the movie, but I don't recall that scratch supposed to be there. I think, unfortunately, it is a case where the paint is just a little muddier than it needed to be. The paint here looks so good here, as well that the paint looked so good on Billy, and then it just gets lost a little bit when we look at the actual figure here, which is really such a shame because I've been so anxiously waiting for West here to finally get a retro cloth. Saw that NECA was going to be doing it. I was super excited. I have to say a little part of me is a little disappointed. Like, the face sculpt is good, but it just seems like it's a little too pasty for my liking. He's got the blood there on the side of his face. Of course, he's got the pair of glasses that he's wearing there right now. You can't really remove them. I mean, I guess you could unpeg them from the sides, but it looks like they're glued instead of actually slotted in place. It's just such a shame that he's got all these imperfections on his face. Even like his nose looks like, I don't know if it's been flattened, but he's got this little indentation on the tip of his nose, which ruins an otherwise really good head sculpt by unnecessary paint, or paint that really wasn't applied appropriately. Even like all the stubbling that he's got on, let me just again bring the packaging right in there. All this great shadowing that they've got on the face here, as you can see, is just gets lost on this particular figure. I don't know what's happened, but I really would have liked this Herbert West instead of really the one that we got right here. Now, I'm not gonna criticize this too much, but it does bother me that the paint here on his neck is just the defaulted plastic, essentially for the same retro cloth figure that we get with all the other retro cloth figures. Somehow it seems even more apparent that the paint doesn't match. A lot of that maybe be the fact that his collar is lower down, but you can see very visibly that the plastic coloring doesn't match that of the head. From the front, you don't see it as much, especially if you've got like the lab coat high enough on him. You really don't see the slight off coloring of the two different plastics, the one painted, the non-painted underneath there. But it's really close inspection that his neck seems very overly tanned, and that's just really due to the plastic that they've used for him. Okay, so we talked a little bit about some negatives. Let's focus on the positives. I'm impressed for the fact that they've actually included like a little watch on him. These sleeves do a good enough job of hiding the plastic underbody that's underneath all the lab coat and the shirt. So you don't really get to see that. He's got his lab coat on. We just move that aside. He's got a slightly off blue, kind of a very light bluish white shirt, and then he's got a kind of green colored tie. Black slacks, and working our way down to just a pair of dress shoes. I feel like the dress shoes have likely been reused from previous retro cloth figures, and in this case they've actually painted the soles. I feel like the soles are a little too light. They probably could have just gone a slightly more brown shade. And a nice shiny pair of like working dress shoes. My biggest stumbling block, I have to admit it though, it's not the accessories, it's not the retro cloth aspect of him, it's again the face, and that's a hard pill to swallow when the majority of the figure, everything you're focusing your attention to is this area here, and the face from a distance doesn't look so bad, but up close, at least on mine, I just got very difficult to not see imperfections right there. Just again, such a shame. Looking at his posability though, Herbert West's head rotates all the way around, up and down as well, and you can rock it back and forth. His arms bring out to about there. I guess you could bring them a little bit higher if you wanted to. Luckily, the material is nice and soft. Nothing really on him is tightening around those shoulders, so you can bring the shoulders forward quite a bit, back quite a bit. He's got a bend in the elbow and a rotation on the hands. You have to be careful when you are rotating the hands, though, that you're sort of holding on to the arm itself. If not, you're going to do what I just was doing there for a second. You're going to start twisting the arm and twisting the fabric around the arm as well. He has a waist swivel. His legs split out, forward and back. He has bend at the knee, and he also has a hinge in the foot. Still kind of hope that down the road we're going to start seeing retro cloth figures that are utilizing ball joints rather than hinge joints. I still sort of have the problem where the legs don't seem to sit flush and flat enough. One foot always wants to sit on an angle. This one's not so bad, but this one here sits on an angle that you end up ultimately having a figure that feels at times like he's not going to stand perfectly. Just bend his arm so I got the right end of, there we go. Rotate it like that and put him down right there. Yeah, he doesn't, you really quickly get the sense that when you put the figure down, this foot sits flat. This foot here sort of sits on an angle. And it's just enough that it throws his stepping off just slightly that the figure may topple over. I really love the accessories. The money for this particular figure release is the fact that he is definitely plentiful when it comes to all his different accessories. The shortcoming though, and I almost would have traded some of this for I think a better paint job on the face. You know, the sad irony is the fact that the severed head of Dr. Hill I feel has a better paint job than the figure in which we were buying, the figure of Herbert West here. It does look like him, but unfortunately paint, the way it was applied, ends up really just disrupting a really good head sculpt by making him really muddy and pasty. Looking at him on the back of the packaging and understanding that that particular figure is of course the production release, that's the one that they take the photography from, but one can't overlook the fact that that paint job on the figure on the back looks far superior than what we ultimately got here in Herbert. It's sad because this is a figure I really want to get in retro cloth form, and I do think he delivers, but I don't think he delivers as well as he could have. It's sort of my same feeling that I had when we look at the Billy from Silent Night, Deadly Night. That was a figure I really wanted in retro cloth, and ultimately, as good as the head sculpt may have been, it's the paint that lets it down. This figure is good, but I feel like the paint lets down the great head sculpt that they put onto Herbert. The only other little small sprinklings of things that are disappointing in the fact that I don't feel he holds the cat very well. Rufus the cat has that little slot gap in between his legs and his tail that ideally you're supposed to be able to fit Herbert's hand into. Try as I might, 9 times out of 10 it usually falls out of his hand. I wish he could have got a better grip, so to speak. Still a nice figure release if you can overlook the fact that the paint is a little rough on Herbert's head. If you are interested in picking this one up for yourself, the Re-animator Herbert West should now be available in comic book stores. If you can't find a comic book store in your area, you can head over to www.comicshoplocator.com, put in your zip code or your postal code, and you should be able to find a comic book store in your area. We're going to have a look at some more retro cloth figures in upcoming videos, so stay tuned for that, and a whole bunch. Got a whole stack here of some other NECA goodies coming your way as well. Make sure you hit that little subscribe button down below, guys. That's the key that'll guarantee that you'll never miss a beat on future videos. And of course, why not swing over to the main page and check out the videos section, see if there's anything you may have missed along the way there as well. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.